Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Hey English Podcast. I'm Philip and I'm so glad you're joining us today.
And I'm Sarah. We're excited to have you with us as we dive into today's topic, something that's part of our everyday lives but also gives us so many ways to express ourselves in English: weather and seasons.
That's right, Sarah. Whether you're talking about a sunny day, a chilly winter morning, or even the time you got caught in a downpour, the weather is a great conversation starter. Plus, it gives us so many fun and useful words, phrases, and even idioms to use.
Absolutely. And not just vocabulary, there's also a lot to learn when it comes to grammar, like how we describe different weather conditions, or how seasons can affect our language choices. So, if you've ever wondered about the difference between it's raining and it rains, or why we say things like under the weather, you're in the right place.
And of course, we'll keep it fun and relaxed, just like always. So whether you're brushing up on your English skills or just here to enjoy the conversation, grab a cup of coffee, tea, or whatever your favorite drink is, and let's get into it.
Yes, let's do it. By the end of this episode, you'll be ready to talk about the weather and seasons like a pro, and maybe even impress your friends with a few new idioms.
Alright, let's jump in. Starting with, how about some basic weather vocabulary, Sarah?
Sounds good to me. Let's go.
So, let's kick things off by talking about some basic weather vocabulary. Sarah, when you hear someone mention the weather, what are the first words that pop into your mind?
Definitely words like sunny, cloudy, rainy, and windy. These are the go-to adjectives when we're describing what it's like outside.
Exactly. And what's great about these words is that they're super versatile. You can say, it's sunny today, or it's a bit cloudy, and you're already painting a picture of the day for someone. But there's so much more to explore, right?
Oh, for sure. For example, instead of just saying, it's raining, you can get a little more descriptive with phrases like, it's pouring, or even, it's a light drizzle. Each phrase gives a different impression, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And here's a fun fact, native speakers often use these descriptive phrases without even thinking about it. It's just part of the flow of conversation. So, if you're learning English, picking up these little phrases can really help you sound more natural.
That's such a good point. And speaking of sounding natural, let's talk a bit about grammar. When we describe the weather, we often use the present continuous tense. Like, it's raining or it's snowing. But why do we use that tense, Philip?
Great question. The present continuous tense is used when we're talking about something that's happening right now, at this very moment. So, if you're looking out the window and it's currently raining, you'd say, it's raining. But if you're talking about general weather patterns, like what usually happens, you'd use the simple present tense and say, it rains a lot in the spring.
Exactly. It's a small difference, but it really changes the meaning of what you're saying. And it's the kind of thing that can trip people up if they're not paying attention. But once you get the hang of it, it becomes second nature.
And then there are those idioms we mentioned earlier. You know, English is full of weather-related idioms. Like, when someone says, I'm feeling under the weather, they don't literally mean they're standing in the rain. It's just a way of saying they're not feeling well.
I love that one. And how about a ray of sunshine? That's a lovely way to describe someone who brings happiness into your life. It's like they brighten up your day, just like the sun does.
Those idioms are such a fun part of the language because they add color to our conversations. So next time you want to talk about how someone made your day better, you can call them a ray of sunshine.
And speaking of brightening up your day, let's try a quick exercise. Philip, how would you describe the weather today using some of the vocabulary we just talked about?
Let's see. I'd say it's a bit overcast, with a light drizzle. Not the best day for a picnic, but perfect for staying in and enjoying a good book.
That's perfect. And see how just a few words can really set the scene. It's so much more engaging than just saying, it's cloudy.
Exactly. And that's what we're aiming for, to help you express yourself in a way that's vivid and clear, so your conversations really come to life.
So next time you're chatting with someone about the weather, try mixing in some of these new words and phrases. You'll be surprised at how much more natural you sound.
And if you're feeling adventurous, throw in an idiom or two. Who knows? You might just be the ray of sunshine in someone's day.
Love it. All right, let's keep this conversation going and dive into how seasons play a role in our language too. Speaking of the weather, seasons are another fascinating topic, aren't they? They not only affect how we live but also how we speak and the words we use.
Absolutely. Seasons can really shape our experiences and even our moods. So, Sarah, which season is your favorite?
I'm all about summer. I love the warmth, the long days, and all the outdoor activities that come with it. How about you?
I'm more of an autumn person. There's something about the crisp air, the changing leaves, and that cozy feeling as the days start to get shorter. It's like the world is winding down, getting ready for a rest.
Autumn is beautiful. And you know what's interesting? Different countries and cultures experience and celebrate the seasons in their own unique ways. For example, in Japan, cherry blossom season in spring is a huge deal. People gather for picnics under the blooming trees. It's called hanami.
That's such a beautiful tradition. And it's amazing how the seasons inspire different cultural practices. In Sweden, for instance, midsummer is a big celebration with dancing, flowers, and a lot of food. It's a way of celebrating the longest day of the year.
Exactly. And when we describe these seasons, we use different vocabulary that really captures the essence of that time of year. Words like blooming in spring or chilly in winter, they help us paint a picture of the season.
Right, and then there are those little differences in language that reflect how we experience seasons. For example, in the US, we say fall for the season with all the falling leaves, but in the UK, they say autumn. Both words are correct, but they give you a bit of insight into the culture.
And it's not just vocabulary, there's also grammar involved when we talk about seasons. For example, we often use the present perfect tense to describe changes that have happened over a period of time, like, the leaves have started to fall, or the flowers have begun to bloom. It's a way of showing that something has recently changed and is still relevant now.
That's a great point. The present perfect tense is really useful for describing those gradual changes we see in nature as the seasons change. And speaking of change, there are some great idioms related to seasons too. Like to be in full bloom, which you can use to describe something that's at its peak, not just flowers but maybe even a project or someone's career.
Yes. Or how about to break the ice? It's a phrase we use to describe starting a conversation, often at the beginning of a meeting or when you're meeting someone new. It's like warming up a chilly atmosphere.
I love that one. It's so common in English that we almost forget it's a weather-related phrase. And here's another, to be a fair weather friend. That's someone who's only around when things are going well, like when the weather is nice, but disappears when times get tough.
Those idioms are such a fun way to make your English more colorful and expressive. And the best part is, they're used all the time in everyday conversation.
Definitely. And it's also interesting to think about how seasons vary around the world. While it's summer in the northern hemisphere, it's winter in the southern hemisphere. So, while we might be enjoying a warm July day, people in Australia are bundling up for winter.
That's such a great point. Seasons aren't the same everywhere, and understanding that can really help when you're talking to someone from a different part of the world. It's a reminder of how diverse and interconnected our experiences are.
So whether you're talking about the cherry blossoms in Japan, the crisp air of an American autumn, or the snowy winters in Canada, seasons give us so much to discuss. And now, you've got some new words, phrases, and idioms to help you do just that.
Exactly. So next time you're chatting with someone, ask them about their favorite season and see where the conversation takes you. You might just learn something new about them, or even about a part of the world you've never visited.
And remember, no matter the season, there's always something beautiful to talk about. Now, let's explore some of those unique idioms and expressions that weather and seasons have inspired. Speaking of unique expressions, have you ever noticed how many idioms in English are inspired by weather? It's like the weather isn't just outside, it's woven into the way we speak too.
Oh, absolutely. Weather idioms are everywhere, and they add so much flavor to our conversations. Let's start with a classic one, under the weather. Do you ever use that one, Philip?
All the time. It's a go-to phrase when you're feeling a bit sick but don't want to go into too much detail. Instead of saying, I'm not feeling well, you just say, I'm a bit under the weather today, and people get it immediately.
Exactly. It's such a simple way to express how you're feeling without making a big deal out of it. Another one I really like is a storm in a teacup. It's such a vivid image, isn't it?
It really is. It's like you're saying someone is making a huge fuss over something really small, like creating a whole storm inside a tiny teacup. It's a great way to point out when someone's overreacting to a minor issue.
Definitely. And then there's every cloud has a silver lining. This one's all about finding something positive in a bad situation, which I think is a great mindset to have.
That's one of my favorites too. It's such an optimistic way to look at things, reminding yourself that even when things seem bad, there's always something good that can come out of it. And speaking of optimism, how about a ray of sunshine?
Oh, that's a lovely one. It's such a nice way to describe someone who brings joy and positivity wherever they go. If someone says you're a ray of sunshine, it's definitely a compliment.
And then there's the opposite, to save for a rainy day. This one's all about being practical and setting something aside, like money, for when things aren't going as well. It's a way of saying, be prepared for tough times.
That's true. It's a good reminder to think ahead and make sure you're ready for whatever life might throw at you. And let's not forget the calm before the storm. That one always gives me a sense of anticipation, like something big is about to happen.
Yes. It's that quiet moment right before everything gets chaotic. It's used a lot when you know something major is coming, but it hasn't hit yet. It's like the universe is giving you a moment to catch your breath.
And then there's to weather the storm, which is all about getting through tough times. It's such a strong, resilient phrase. When you say someone's weathered the storm, you're saying they've made it through something really challenging and come out the other side.
That's a powerful one for sure. It's a great way to acknowledge someone's strength and perseverance. And all of these idioms, they're so much more than just words. They're little stories in themselves, and they can really enrich your English.
They really can. And the best part is, once you start using them, they become second nature. You'll find they just pop into your conversations naturally. Plus, they're a fun way to express yourself with a bit of flair.
So, next time you're talking about the weather, or just about life in general, try slipping one of these idioms into the conversation. It's a great way to sound more fluent and add a little extra meaning to what you're saying.
And don't worry if you don't get them perfect right away. Like everything with language learning, it takes practice. But the more you use these expressions, the more natural they'll feel.
Exactly. And remember, language is all about connecting with others, so have fun with it. Now, let's keep things rolling and explore how weather and seasons influence culture around the world.
You know, what's really fascinating is how weather and seasons aren't just topics of conversation, they're also deeply rooted in different cultures around the world. The way people experience and talk about them can vary so much depending on where they live.
That's so true. Take, for example, the monsoon season in India. It's not just about heavy rains, it's a vital time for agriculture, and it's celebrated with festivals and rituals. For many people, the monsoon is seen as a blessing because it brings the rain needed for crops to grow.
Exactly. And then there's something like the winter in Scandinavia. While some of us might dread the long, dark winters, people there have a concept called hygge, which is all about finding coziness and warmth during the cold months. It's a way of making the most of the season by enjoying simple pleasures like candles, hot drinks, and spending time with loved ones.
That's such a beautiful tradition. It's like turning what some might see as a negative into something positive and comforting. And then there's midsummer in Sweden, which is all about celebrating the longest day of the year with dancing, flowers, and big feasts. It's a huge deal and brings people together to enjoy the light and warmth.
Midsummer is amazing. And speaking of celebrations, the Spring Festival in China is another great example. It's the Chinese New Year, and it marks the end of winter and the beginning of a new season. People celebrate with fireworks, dragon dances, and big family gatherings.
Right. And even here in the US, we have our own traditions tied to the seasons. Think about Thanksgiving in the fall, a time to gather with family and friends, enjoy a big meal, and reflect on what we're grateful for as the year starts to wind down.
And then there's the 4th of July in the summer, which is all about barbecues, fireworks, and celebrating independence. The warm weather makes it the perfect time for outdoor activities and community events.
And what's interesting is that the way we talk about these events and seasons often reflects the values and priorities of the culture. For example, in places where winters are harsh, you'll find lots of expressions about enduring tough times, like to weather the storm, or even celebrating when the sun finally comes out.
That's a great observation. And it's not just about enduring the weather, it's also about celebrating it. In Japan, for instance, cherry blossom season isn't just a pretty time of year, it's a national event. People gather for hanami picnics under the blooming trees, celebrating the beauty of the moment and the fleeting nature of life.
That's such a lovely tradition. It really shows how deeply connected people are to the natural world and the changing seasons. And it's also a reminder that while we all experience the seasons, we do so in ways that are shaped by our surroundings, our history, and our culture.
Absolutely. So whether it's finding joy in the coziness of winter, celebrating the return of spring, or embracing the heat of summer, every culture has its own way of connecting with the weather and the seasons. And learning about these traditions can give us a deeper understanding of the world and the people in it.
It really does. And it's a great way to broaden your perspective, especially when you're learning a new language. Understanding these cultural nuances helps you not just speak the language, but also connect with the people who use it.
So next time you're chatting with someone from a different part of the world, ask them about how they experience the seasons. You might just discover a new tradition or a different way of looking at something you thought was universal.
And who knows? You might even find a new way to appreciate the weather and seasons in your own life. Now, let's take a closer look at how weather forecasting can even influence the language we use.
Weather forecasting is such an interesting part of our daily lives, isn't it? It's something we all rely on, whether we're planning a weekend trip, deciding what to wear, or just making small talk.
Definitely. And it's amazing how much the language we use is influenced by those forecasts. Think about how often you hear phrases like partly cloudy, chance of showers, or temperatures will drop. These are all ways we've learned to talk about what might happen in the near future.
Exactly. It's like we've developed a whole vocabulary just to prepare ourselves for what the weather might bring. And what's fascinating is how different regions have their own ways of describing the weather. For example, in some places, they might say the skies will clear, while in others, you might hear the clouds will break. It's all about painting a picture of what's to come.
That's so true. And let's not forget the phrases we use to talk about uncertainty in weather predictions. Things like there's a good chance of rain, or it looks like it might snow. These expressions show how we're always hedging our bets, because, as we all know, the weather can be unpredictable.
Right, and that unpredictability is what keeps weather forecasting so interesting. There's a whole range of expressions that reflect this uncertainty, like we're expecting showers, or snow is likely. These are all ways of saying, we think this is going to happen, but we're not 100% sure.
And then there's the language of extremes. When a big storm is on the way, the language ramps up. Suddenly, you're hearing about severe weather warnings, or dangerous conditions. It's like the words themselves are trying to prepare you for what's coming.
Exactly. And those words can really make an impact, can't they? When you hear about a severe thunderstorm warning, it definitely gets your attention. It's not just information, it's a call to action.
And that's what makes weather forecasts so powerful. They don't just inform us, they influence our decisions and even our emotions. The words used in a forecast can set the tone for the day, whether it's a bright and sunny one or a cold and dreary one.
And speaking of tone, weather forecasts often use a mix of factual and friendly language to connect with people. You might hear a meteorologist say something like, "It's going to be a chilly one, so don't forget your jacket." It's informative, but it also feels like a helpful reminder from a friend.
That's a great point. It's a blend of science and conversation. And it's one of the reasons why weather forecasts are such a big part of our lives. They're not just about data, they're about making the data relatable and useful for everyone.
So true. And whether we're talking about a slight chance of rain or a high of 75 degrees, we're using language to predict and prepare for what's ahead. It's all about understanding the possibilities and planning accordingly.
And that's why weather forecasting is such a universal topic. It's something we all experience, no matter where we are in the world. It's a daily reminder that, while we can't control the weather, we can at least try to be ready for whatever comes our way.
Absolutely. And now that we've explored how we talk about the weather and seasons, and how we predict them, let's wrap up with some tips on how you can practice using all these new words and phrases in your own conversations. So, after all this talk about weather, seasons, and how they shape our language and culture, what's the big takeaway? Well, it's that weather is more than just a topic of conversation, it's a way to connect with others, learn about different cultures, and even understand a bit more about ourselves.
Exactly. Whether you're talking about the weather with a neighbor, discussing the changing seasons with friends from another country, or just planning your day based on the forecast, you're engaging in a shared human experience. And the words and phrases we use, like the idioms we've discussed, add depth and color to that experience.
And don't forget, the next time you hear a weather forecast, or find yourself talking about the seasons, try using some of the vocabulary and expressions we've explored today. It's a great way to practice your English and make your conversations more interesting and relatable.
That's right. Language learning is all about using what you've learned in real life situations. So, whether you're talking about a sunny day, a snowy night, or a storm that's rolling in, remember that you now have some new tools to express yourself more clearly and naturally.
And most importantly, have fun with it. Language is a living, breathing thing, and the more you play with it, the more comfortable and confident you'll become.
So go ahead, talk about the weather, share your favorite season, or even try out a new idiom. You'll be surprised at how much you can learn and how much you can connect with others through something as simple as a conversation about the weather.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this chat about weather, seasons, and all the fascinating language that comes with them. We'll see you next time with more tips and insights to help you on your English learning journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications. See you next time on Hey English.
Take care, and don't forget to keep practicing and exploring new ways to use English in your daily life. See you soon.